morning, Miss Reece. I'm here to ask you some questions about the history of Roosevelt so that we can help our second grade students understand the school a little bit better. To start with, how long have you worked at Roosevelt?
Altogether, I've worked here 12 years. I was here for 3, and then we vacated the building so that it could be demolished and a new one built. And then I came back and opened the new building 9 years ago.
Okay. What did Roosevelt look like when you first worked here?
It was a very, very small school. It had been built in different phases. So the original part was just 2 floors, and it had probably about 20 classrooms. Very old. There were no closets in the building. We had 1 set of bathrooms that everybody had to go to. Later on, a cafeteria was added, and another side of the building that looked just like the original side was built. And so then we had about 40 classrooms. We had about 340 kids when we closed the building, so the school was very small.
Oh wow, very interesting, because now it's probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably double the size, or roughly
Absolutely.
double?
Right now we're running about 660 kids, and we have gone up to 700.
Okay. How is it different today?
Oh, today the building has much more to offer our students than it did before. Our school at the time that we closed had a lot of flooding issues. We had actually 3 stories. We had the 2nd floor, we had the 1st floor, and we had a basement. Our pre-K were in the basement along with our technology labs. So they didn't have windows or anything like that. And every time it rained, it flooded down there.
Oh no.
And the science lab was also down there. It was very dark, it was very dated, and eventually the walls started rotting from where the water would sit in the floor.
Oh wow.
So we had a lot of things like that that kind of handicapped us. The new building has a beautiful science lab that's not dark, it's updated, it's got the cabinets in it, it's got the eye wash station in it. We have 2 beautiful technology labs that can facilitate more students going inside. We have current technology. We have a music room that was built to be a music room for the sound barrier. We have an art room that has a kiln in it. We didn't even have an art room at the time, nor did we have an art teacher because we had such a small enrollment.
Wow.
The gym is actually the same. The gym was built probably about 2 years before we closed the old building, and because it was so new at the time, it remained, and we didn't build a new gym. So it's probably the oldest thing around here, but it was very new when we left the old Roosevelt.
Okay. That's very interesting. So there's been a lot of changes since the original school. Can you think about, you mentioned a lot of changes already about the school itself. Can you think about, are there any other physical changes maybe in the area itself, and maybe how the school was before, where it's kind of located differently in orientation or anything like that?
When you walk into the school right now, this building right now is actually where the playground was.
Okay.
So there would be some parking back here and a playground back here and a courtyard, and every morning this is where we would line up. We didn't go inside the building. So every teacher, every grade level had their area to go outside in the courtyard and line up unless it was a rainy day. The parking lot is where the school stood. So the physical arrangements of all of that are very different. Then the ditch right here, there actually was a driveway right beside it, and that's how we got to the back to park. There was no parking in the front whatsoever. So when you pulled up to the school, you came down St. Louis and you saw the school because it was right against the curb. And when we dismissed in the afternoon, we all went out to the grass and stood in the grass right next to the curb for the parents to come pick the kids up.
And something else I noticed, you were mentioning how amazing the science labs are, and not to backtrack a little bit, but I also noticed you mentioned the playground, that when the kids first walk in, this used to be the playground. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And now I noticed what's really neat is that your kinder and 1st grade teachers, I've noticed, can exit their classrooms onto the playground. So that's really cool. I thought that was a nice feature of the school that sounds very different than it was before.
That's absolutely right. And when we designed the school, we were very fortunate that those of us who were here when we closed the school down, we got to serve on a committee to help design what the building would look like.
Wow.
So we were able to pick out the physical arrangements of the classrooms. We were able to pick out the colors. We were able to pick out that we wanted it enclosed inside the lower grade playground. We were able to pick out the columns that were in the library. And
Wow.
the way we did that were visits. We went and visited other districts and other schools that were new, and we were able to take design elements from that to come back here and build this school.
That had to be really neat, being part of that process, and the library looks great too. What else has changed in the community in this area, do you think?
In the area as a whole, I haven't seen a lot of change around here. I think the school is probably the biggest thing that I've seen change. We still have the same shops and everything like that. Now, if you go down toward the 151 area, there's a lot of things that are currently being built over there or have been built probably in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of city projects. So like the fire department has their training facility out there.
Oh yes, that's right.
And then they did a big sports park on the other side of that. There's a big project going on the other side of 151. And they just passed a bond where they're going to build something over off of 90 behind that Jack in the Box and the gas station. So in those areas there has been a lot of growth.
And you mentioned a bond. Are you referring to an Edgewood bond? Or?
No, that would be city.
A city
it's all
bond.
City projects.
Okay, so city development in that area near the Jack in the Box. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Do you know when and why Roosevelt was first built?
Actually, it was not an elementary school. It was when it was built. It was built in 1957. The first school here was the Edgewood School.
Mm-hmm.
And so it serviced everybody from first grade all the way up to 12th grade. And the area here was a Belgian community. It was farmland. So there were about 12 big farmers here, and then they had the people that worked for them, and they needed a place to send their kids. So they started the Edgewood School. And then it started growing and growing and growing, and they had the Edgewood High School. This was actually a middle school. Roosevelt was the answer to the growth that was happening, and it was a middle school. And it turned years later into an elementary, and then it closed. It closed in about somewhere in the 1980s, I believe. And in fact, some people will remember Miss Lucy Hall because she used to be a principal in the district, and then later on a board. She was an executive director and then a board member. And she actually closed it the first time it was closed. And then they reopened it because of the growth in the community.
Oh, very good. Who helped to build the school?
The second time?
If you know anything about the first time, sure, but I know you do have quite a vast knowledge of this when it was rebuilt, so that's fine too. Whatever you can offer in either area.
Okay, I'll talk about the second time because it was a bond election that the district passed for us to have 2 new schools. And we did that because our schools were so outdated and they were in dire need. Like I said, there was flooding going on, the walls were rotting out. And we said we're going to address the elementary schools first, and then we're going to go up and address the middle school, and then we're going to address the high school. We had what we called a facilities committee that consisted of community members, parents, teachers, administrators, and we met once a month, sometimes more than that because we needed to make decisions. And we had been meeting for probably about 10 years. And one of the things, the first thing that came out of it was the bond for 2 new elementary schools. Plus we did a lot of other things in the bond for infrastructure such as technology wiring in all the schools, electrical upgrades in all the schools, things of that nature. So everybody benefited from the bond, but mostly Las Palmas and Roosevelt benefited because we got brand new schools.
Wow, very good. Who is our school named after, and why is this person important?
The school is named after Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he was one of the presidents of the United States. He was a Democrat, and he actually worked a lot to help the common people. So his goal was it was during the Depression, people were having a very hard time, and his goal was to get America back on its feet again. So what could he do to help people out? And he also was very involved in the United Nations. So we were at a time of war. What could he do to help bring peace about, and what could he do to help talk to other nations so that we could all be on the same page?
And my final question, is there anything else that you would like the second grade students, or any student for that matter at Roosevelt, to know about this campus?
I'd like them to know that we're very fortunate to have this campus, Roosevelt Elementary. It took a lot of money for us to get here, and I think we should always honor the hard work that went into this school, respect it, keep it clean, keep it neat, and always be safe here, because not every student gets to come to such a nice school.
That's true. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. I think you've offered a lot of insight on the past, present, and future of Roosevelt. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pamela.
You're welcome.